Hi guys, John from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. And today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the different electrical defects that home inspectors here in New Jersey find, when they're conducting, home inspections. Now, this is not going to be a comprehensive list, but this is just really to give you guys an idea of some of the things that we're going to be looking for, during your home inspection. And we'll start off pretty easy here. So, the first thing home inspectors are going to look for, especially in kitchens and bathrooms and unfinished basements and garages and exterior electrical receptacles, are GFCI protection. So, GFCI means ground fault circuit interrupter. And the idea of a GFCI is to prevent you guys from getting electric shocked, right? So what a GFCI does is it meters current going in and it meters current going out. And if there's a slight deviation in that going in versus what's going out, it's going to trip and it's going to trip and hopefully it's going to save you from getting injured, hurt or electric shock. So that's the first thing. And GFCIs are required and we always look for them in bathrooms and kitchens. And it's true, some older homes don't have GFCI protection in these areas. And actually, some newer homes don't, especially a lot of times on flip homes, we'll see, not a lot of GFCI outlets, or they'll be only partially replaced with GFCI, and then some of them will still be, standard electrical outlets in kitchens and bathrooms. So this is something that's sort of on the safety end of thing, and we're always going to be looking for GFCI electrical receptacles. And I can't remember the last home inspection report that I've written that doesn't have some mention of in some way GFCI protection. So that's the first thing we're certainly going to look for. And on the same sort of realm, we are required to carry an outlet tester, and we do test those GFCIs, it can be somewhat problematic, and we'll talk about that in another video, but let's just leave it at that for our purposes here. And we also test each electrical outlet, or what we call a sample of the electrical outlets in the home. We have to at least do 2 per room, but I try to do them all if they're accessible. I mean, because I'm worried about the one that I don't test. That's the one that's going to be the problem, right? So I try to test every one that I can, realistically. I mean, we can't get to everything, especially if it's behind furniture, but we do try to test it. And some of those things that we find are ungrounded outlets, okay, which means that the outlet or the receptacle just isn't as safe as it could be. So there's no path to ground in that electrical outlet. So if you were to have a problem with an appliance or a piece of equipment, or some other issue in the outlet or the receptacle, you wouldn't have a safe path to ground, and you yourself may become the path to ground. And we don't want that, because that means that you're getting electric shock, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Also, reverse polarity is another thing that we often find. It's a very simple thing to detect with your outlet tester. And reverse polarity simple means that neutral and the hot wires are reversed in the electrical receptacle. And you'll still have power in the electrical receptacle, but if you run an appliance or some other piece of equipment, it may not be as safe as it could be. So sometimes with reverse polarity, you can actually have the metal jacket of a piece of equipment become hot, and that is an electric shock hazard. So we want the electrical system in your home to be obviously the best that it can be, the safest it can be. Downstairs, we're usually opening the electrical panel box if it's safe to do so. So I try to open these boxes as best as I can. And we're in New Jersey, the New Jersey Home Inspection Advisory Committee it's part of the rules and regulations that we open the electrical panel box. So we're going to be trying to do that if it's safe to do that. And one of the things that we find often is a double tapped circuit breaker. Now, most breakers are designed to have one electrical circuit or one wire attached to it. So the circuit breaker is protecting one wire. But sometimes you'll see two wires, and on occasion, actually, sometimes three, which would be a triple tap circuit breaker. And we don't want this because, especially if the wire sizes are different or the types in the manufacturing of the electrical wire is different, you can have a little bit of expansion and contraction, which ultimately can cause one of those wires to become loose and create a safety hazard. So we really want to have each electrical circuit protected by one breaker. And that's a simple thing that your home inspector is going to look for. And also, while we're in the panel box, we're going to make sure that we don't have neutral wires that are double tapped, we don't have any singed wires, and we don't have any other problems. And another problem that we find sometimes is moisture entering the panel box. And moisture entering the panel box from a couple of ways, typically. And we won't really go deep dive into how that is, but one of the things that we're going to look for is signs of moisture, rusting in the panel box. Are the breakers rusted? Is the bottom of the box rusted? And, how is that moisture possibly, gaining entrance into the panel box? So we don't want to have, obviously, moisture entering a panel box because that is an unsafe condition for sure. And sometimes we'll find insects, and sometimes we'll find evidence of rodents in the panel box. So we'll find sometimes rodent droppings in there. So we always want to make sure that we don't have rodents getting in the panel box because we don't want to have them cause trouble inside the box where they'll, their body will die and then they'll go over two wires and they'll cause a short or a possible electric and fire hazard. So, we look for this kind of thing. And it's really, when we're in there, we're looking for all kind of common sense problems. And another problem that we try to locate is wires that are, breakers that don't match the wire sizes correctly. So if you have too small a breaker protecting too large of a circuit, that can be an extreme hazard, a fire hazard. So an electric shock hazard also. So we're going to be looking for that too. That's not a problem that we find too often, and most likely that problem has to do with non-professional or amateur electrical work, inside the panel box. And so we're going to be looking around also to the electrical circuits that we can see, and we're going to be looking at the junction boxes. So a junction box is where electrical wires come in, and that's sort of akin to like a splice box, right? So every electrical circuit, when it comes into a junction box, has to have proper splicing. And sometimes as home inspectors, we'll see all kind of crazy, splicing of wires, and they'll just kind of be hanging loose with just some electrical tape around them. And the electrical code indicates that all of the splicing that's done in a home has to be in a safe junction box. And we certainly look at that and we call out any of these electrical deficiencies. This is especially problematic above suspended ceilings. So as a home inspector in New Jersey, we're not required to look above a suspended ceiling, but I try to, as best as I can, look above suspended ceilings if I can move those tiles. And sometimes they're tight and sometimes they're just really challenging. You don't want to cause damage. But if there's lighting in that, say that basement ceiling or room ceiling above that ceiling, right? If there's wiring above that, a lot of times we'll find really bad splicing, or we'll find that electrical wire just laying on that the metal ceiling frame, which is another sort of defect. So good home inspectors, we're going to try to do these things. We're going to try to go to the extra mile for our clients by just pushing aside a few of those basement ceiling tiles. And I think that's that's really a good idea. I certainly try to do that. If the house is older, not that old, but say mid 60s to early 70s, we're going to be looking for single strand aluminum circuit wiring, which is a sort of a larger electrical defect. And insurance companies certainly have their problems with this type of wiring too, but it's something that we do want to alert our client to if there's any aluminum wiring in the home, because this is a known electrical fire defect, because that aluminum wiring expands and contracts as it gets hot, as current guns through it. That's current runs through it, and that can loosen up the wiring at the various junction points in the home. Say at your electrical light fixtures. So you have that wire over the years just getting larger, smaller, larger, smaller, and that can cause arcing if that wire were to become, if it were to loosen up a lot. So that's something we look for too. That's one of the most important defects if you're buying a house from that era, say early mid 1960s to early 1970s. That's something that you definitely got to keep your foreshort and antenna up about. And we're going to be looking for ground rod also on the exterior of the home. So we want to make sure that any lightning strike or any severe issue with overcurrent has the right path to ground. And this is done by a lightning rod, or what we call an electrode at the front of, at the, close to the electrical panel box. And that electrode, right, which is what you guys would consider a ground rod or grounding electrode, should be installed about 8 feet deep into the soil. And a lot of times we'll give it a shake, and it'll just be loose. It'll kind of be, it seemed like it's maybe 2.5 feet, 2 feet deep, and that would be another thing, either looking for it missing or looking for it improperly installed, or sometimes they cheat and they'll put it on an angle and just kind of bang it in that way. But that's something that we're going to be looking for that as well. And of course, we're always on our toes when we do homes, right? Older homes, newer homes, flip houses. We're looking for wiring that just doesn't look correct. That is, sort of DIY or amateur installed wiring, right? So we're always on our toes with electrical wiring because of two things. It can cause severe injury via electric shock, and it can cause fire hazards, right? The last thing you want in a house that you just recently purchased is a house fire. And that's the last thing that home inspectors here in New Jersey want also, is for you to have an electrical problem when you first move into the home. So there's a lot of electrical defects that home inspectors here in New Jersey look for. And this is just sort of like just a top sort of view. This is not everything. There's hundreds of different things that we're going to look for. But I thought it would be helpful just to kind of give you guys an overview of some of the things that, on the electrical inspection and what home inspectors are going to look for. These are just a few, but there's many, many more. So if you guys have any questions about electrical defects or just home inspections in general, I'm John from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. Just reach out. Be happy to answer any questions you have. We'll see you next time.